Alright, welcome back to MGM. I'm Jimmy. Today we're going to be doing a compare and contrast of Necromunda and Kill Team. I received a comment not too long back on one of my videos requesting this, so I figured it would probably be good to make, as both of them are specialty games from Games Workshop. At face value, they can seem kind of similar, so hopefully this video will help you make a better buying decision if you're looking to get one, whether Necromunda would fit you better or Kill Team. As a quick note, I do like and enjoy both of these games for various reasons, and that's why you see them on the channel. They both take place in the greater Warhammer 40k universe. Necromunda obviously being on the planet of Necromunda, but it could be just about any other hive planet out there, I assume. And Kill Team also taking place in that same 40k universe space. They both feature starter boxes that out of the box can get you on the table with either 2 gangs or 2 kill teams with terrain, and also a rule book with how to play. And then they have several expansions coming behind that to continue to expand on your forces and get more into the game of your choosing. I find that both Necromunda and Kill Team are very accessible to get on the tabletop quickly and start playing games, as typically you're going to be fielding smaller forces than your normal game of 40k or something that is a larger army style mass battle type of game. So in Necromunda and Kill Team, you're typically fielding anywhere from 6 to 12, 14 operatives, somewhere around in that range, so you don't have to paint up a ton of models to play the games. In addition, both games have been well supported by Games Workshop over the last few years. Necromunda got a huge re-release in 2017, I think it was, and ever since then they've come out with a new starter box. They've released the House of books, they've been releasing new gangs, a lot of new models, and we've seen a lot of good support behind Necromunda. Kill Team, if you followed that game any, you'll know that it got a re-release in 2021, and they have released new box sets about every quarter. Now again, at face value, if you've never heard of these games before and you look at the two side by side, you may think that they are pretty similar, but they are vastly different. They are similar in some ways, but there's a ton of difference between these two games, and we will start out with the first topic of that, which is going to be the game mechanics. Now, I can't say that I love this enough about both of these games, and that is alternating activations. What I mean by that is it breaks the system of I move all of my forces, I shoot, I fight, and then you do the same thing on your side, the whole I go, you go system. This is alternating activations, so you will activate one fighter on your side, you will do the actions with that fighter, and then your opponent in turn will activate another fighter on their side, and out and back it goes. So if you overextend yourself and go for, a shot and you move into the open to take that shot, you have to know that doing so tactically could leave you exposed if that was very early on in the turn sequence, and your opponent would have numerous opportunities to take advantage of that. I really like that from a tactical perspective, and that happens in both of these games. But when looking at core mechanics of these games, with Kill Team specifically, you have an action point limit, or APL for short. Most of the time this is 2, although there are some factions that have 3, and it can be modified to higher and lower depending on what kind of abilities you play. But the action points are what allow you to do certain moves. And like I said, most of the time you have 2 APL, and you can do 2 actions if they cost 1 action point each. So all of the actions have a cost associated with them. Most of the time those actions cost 1 point. There will be some times where it may cost 2 or even 0. In Kill Team, your actions have to be different, so you can move and shoot, you can move and dash, you can do a lot of different combinations, but in Kill Team you cannot repeat the same action under normal circumstances. So you could not move twice, as an example. That's a bit different in Necromunda. Necromunda has types of actions that you can do, and it is simple, basic, and double. And if a move is a simple, you could do it twice. If it's basic, you could only do it once. So Necromunda tends to get a little more crunchy with the way that they define the rules, but in Necromunda, because a move is considered to be simple, you could, in fact, do that twice, where in Kill Team, you would have to move and dash. You could not repeat that same action twice. Both systems kind of have that core mechanic where you move and shoot, or you move twice, or a move and dash or something like that to get into cover. It feels at the core kind of that two action system, if you will, in one way or another. Now, one of the things that is probably simpler on the Kill Team side is going to be your shooting, and that is pretty much just your ballistic skill that you will find on your fighter card. In Necromunda, it is your ballistic skill plus or minus a lot of modifiers. And those modifiers can be for short range, so if your weapon has a 24-inch range and you get within half, which is 12 inches, then you could get a +1 modifier to your shooting attack. So your ballistic skill, if it's 4, it now becomes a 3 to hit. And then you have to look at some things like, well, is my opponent in partial cover? If they are, that would be a -1. If they're in full cover, a -2. So there's a lot of modifiers to the shooting. In Kill Team, it pretty much just is, hey, look, you hit on your ballistic skill. So very simple from that aspect. Necromunda gets a lot more gritty with some of these rules, and they're a lot more detailed. Also, when talking about these games, you have to look at the board size, and the board size on Necromunda, typically you will be on a 3x3 or a 4x4, whereas Kill Team is going to be much smaller. As such, there's a lot of weapons in Kill Team that do not have a range associated with them, because the expectation is that you could just simply fire that weapon across the board, where in Necromunda you will certainly have weapons that are going to be out of range. It should be worth noting that pre-measuring can be a big thing in games. There's no pre-measuring in Necromunda. So you must declare a shot or declare an action before actually measuring it out to do it. And if you do that with a weapon and you find that you're out of range, you still have to take that shot, because there's a potential that you could run out of ammunition. In Kill Team, it is a pre-measure game, so you can kind of map all of this stuff out before taking that risk. Combat for both games is also pretty different as well. We'll talk about Kill Team first, because when you're doing combat and you roll dice, both sides are essentially rolling at the same time and striking each other. And then you select whoever the attacker is or who charged. They get to select if they want to strike you or parry, which is essentially eliminating or potentially eliminating one of your dice. And then they will in turn do the same to you. In Necromunda, it is pretty cut and dry. If you charge, you resolve all of your attacks first, so you would have the opportunity to take a fighter out of action before they actually have a chance to make reaction attacks against you. In Kill Team, more times than not, you are going to get hit at some point, even if you were the person that charged into combat. Characteristics are vastly different between the two games. In Kill Team, you're going to have a defense where if you're hit by an attack, you get to roll equal to your defense. Let's say it's 3. You'll get to roll 3 dice and attempt to beat your save characteristic to block those shots. AP in Kill Team, which is armor penetration, actually negates the amount of defense dice that you get to roll. In Necromunda, AP is more traditional in the sense that it takes away from your armor save. So normally if your armor save is 5 and you get hit with an AP1 weapon, well, your armor save becomes 6. In Kill Team, however, you just roll 1 less defense die. So in looking at game mechanics, both of these games are skirmish games. You're working with a limited number of fighters or operatives. Moving is kind of similar. The way that the activations pass out and back between you and your opponent are pretty similar. Your shooting is certainly going to be a little different, because in Necromunda you're going to have a lot of modifiers. AP is also treated a little differently than Kill Team. And then when you're resolving combat, obviously in Kill Team, you're kind of resolving that combat simultaneously, versus in Necromunda where you're resolving the charger first and then your opponent gets to fight back. There is one area specifically in Kill Team I feel could be a little better worded, I'll put it that way, and that is when it comes to line of sight, cover, and obscurity. In Necromunda, it is pretty dang easy. If you can see the model, you've got line of sight. If more than 50% of their base is obstructed or behind cover, then they get, full cover. And if it's less than that, but they still have something in cover, it's partial cover. And it is that easy. In Kill Team, it is a bit of a word salad, because one, you have to look at what your opponent has. Well, first, can you see them? And if you can see them, do they have an engage order or a conceal order, and we haven't really gotten into those mechanics yet. We'll talk about that in just a second. But then it becomes, drawing line of sight to them, and then, if they're within an inch of terrain or beyond 4 inches of terrain, it really can get complicated when you're reading over it at first. Now, I will say, after you play the game and get some of it under your belt, it actually really starts to make sense, and it's a system that I kind of like. It kind of makes sense to be able to have an operative kneeling down, because on the tabletop we can't just simply smash our models down and say, hey, look, he is kneeling down behind this obstacle. They're sitting there standing, so they're always going to have visibility to them. But Kill Team does give you that option to where if they do that with a conceal order, they're considered to be kind of hiding behind that terrain, and you wouldn't be able to draw line of sight to them. Talking about the orders with Kill Team, there's a lot going on with engage and conceal orders, and this is where a lot of the tactics come in really at the very beginning of the game. You're going to assign each of your operatives an engage or a conceal order, and that really defines if they can shoot. They need to have an engage order majority of the time. If they want to launch into combat, they need to have an engage order, unless you're like an orc commando or something. They're kind of special, but your engage and conceal orders really kind of dictate what you can do. And if you have one of those conceal orders, you're able to kind of sneak around the battlefield, not making yourself an eligible target. Even if someone can draw line of sight to you, you're not eligible for them to make an attack because you have a conceal order. That is kind of cool. On the Necromunda side, it is really just what you see is what you get. So if you can see the model something more than just their arm hanging out, then you're going to be eligible to take that shot. While the combat systems of both these games are pretty different, there is something that you have to know is when you're reduced to 0 wounds in Kill Team, you're out of action. You're incapacitated. In Necromunda, that is not always the case. So just because you reduce a fighter's wounds down to 0, they could become seriously injured, but they could also recover in the end phase and potentially keep going in the fight. I think this is a awesome way to do it. I really like the randomness of it, and just because you seriously injure a fighter, if you don't go take them out, they could crawl to a safe space and end up returning back to the fight. Now, both of these games try to incorporate a certain narrative aspect, and I do feel like Kill Team tried to pick up a little bit on what Necromunda was doing. Necromunda is massive when it comes to the narrative, and your fighters gaining experience from each battle and purchasing new equipment. They are leveling up their skills. If they happen to get injured in one of the games, it could be a serious injury which will modify one of their statistics, most of the time in a negative way. There is a lot of things going on. You could have issues with your movement, have your strength, toughness reduced, an eye injury can worsen your ballistic skill. There is a lot of depth to the narrative of Necromunda. Really too much to go into detail, but it is just massive what you can do. Kill Team tries to pick some of that up, but it is in a much more lighter fashion to where, hey, look, your guys are still gaining experience, and they can get things that'll modify characteristics and things like that, but it's, purchasing of equipment and things like that to make your kill teams stronger. While Kill Team encourages you to name your fighters and a base of operations that you can improve and things like that, it really doesn't even scratch the surface of the narrative elements that Necromunda provides. So if you're maybe like a D&D player and you really like that story-driven type of game, then Necromunda is certainly going to provide a ton more depth than Kill Team. Now that said, Kill Team is a game that can be played over lunch. You could probably set up a game of Kill Team and easily play that during your lunch break, an hour, hour and 15 minutes, whatever it may be, and have a great time. Necromunda does take a little bit more time to get a table set up. If you want to do a proper table or do a table like we do, then it takes a lot of time to set that up and get it ready to play the game. A lot of times you'll be checking a lot of things, checking weapon profiles and things like that, and other certain kind of rules interactions. Necromunda, I feel, can take a little longer to play than just setting up a kill team, declaring your mission, and going for it. That said, if you are playing Necromunda more narratively versus a one-off kind of a deal, there's a lot more bookkeeping that goes along to it if you're playing in a campaign than the bookkeeping that you would have with Kill Team. Obviously, Necromunda being so in-depth, the rules are a lot more crunchy, I guess is the word that I'm looking for, versus Kill Team. Kill Team does feel a little more streamlined. There's a lot of rules, interactions, and things that can happen, but once you get the hang of those, things are pretty easy from that point on. In Necromunda, because you have access to so many different things, you're always learning about something new ways to equip your fighters, new special rules, and the way that they may interact with what you have going on the battlefield. I feel that both of these games are really outstanding skirmish games, and for different reasons. When I am looking to just really kind of get the feel for what is happening at the individual level in a hive city, and I'm looking to really just tell a story and have the moments from this game carry on and impact what is happening in the future games, Necromunda is certainly my go-to. If I'm looking to just, play a quick game with my son and have a lot of fun, throw down some terrain on a small board, get our models together, and just, play, then Kill Team is certainly where I look to go. If you have any additional thoughts on what the differences are between these two gaming systems, feel free to leave them down in the comments below. I look forward to reading those. I certainly appreciate you watching this video, and we will see you in the next one. Take care.